Staff Sergeant Maria Santos stepped off the transport shuttle and onto the gleaming platform of the Galactic Military Academy. The structure stretched impossibly high above her, its crystalline spires catching the light of 3 different suns. Around her, beings from dozens of different species moved with purpose, their uniforms marking them as the finest warriors their civilizations had to offer. Maria adjusted her standard Earth Marine dress blues and shouldered her duffel bag. She was the only human on the platform, and she could feel the weight of countless alien eyes studying her with barely concealed curiosity and skepticism. Another Deathworlder, she heard someone mutter in Galactic Standard. The speaker was a tall, elegant being with blue-tinted skin and 4 arms, a Kitharan from the core worlds. I wonder how long this one will last. Maria had been hearing variations of that comment for the past 6 months, ever since humanity had been granted membership in the Galactic Defense Coalition. Earth was classified as a Class 12 death world, meaning it was considered one of the most dangerous planets capable of supporting intelligent life. Most coalition members came from garden worlds with carefully controlled climates and peaceful ecosystems. The idea that anything truly dangerous could come from such a hostile environment was apparently difficult for them to grasp. "Attention all new arrivals," a voice announced in perfect Galactic Standard. "Please proceed to Assembly Hall 7 for orientation briefing." Maria followed the crowd through corridors that seemed to pulse with their own inner light. The academy was a marvel of engineering, built into an asteroid that had been completely hollowed out and transformed into a training facility. Artificial gravity kept everyone oriented properly, regardless of which surface they walked on. Assembly Hall 7 was massive, with seating for nearly 1,000 beings. Maria found herself a spot near the back. Noting how other students seemed to instinctively move away from her, she'd grown used to it. Most galactic species found humans unsettling on a biological level. Too many teeth, eyes that faced forward like predators, and reflexes that were just a little too quick. The hall quieted as a figure took the stage. Admiral Thexus was a Villani, one of the older species in the Coalition. His people had been exploring space when humans were still discovering fire. He stood nearly 8 feet tall, with gray skin that looked like weathered stone and 6 eyes arranged around his elongated skull. "Welcome to the Galactic Military Academy," Admiral Thexus began, his voice carrying easily through the hall. "You represent the finest warriors your species have to offer. Here, you will be tested, trained, and transformed into the defenders our galaxy needs." His gaze swept across the assembled students, pausing briefly on Maria. "Some of you come from species with proud military traditions spanning millennia. Others represent worlds that have only recently joined our great coalition. Regardless of your background, you will be judged solely on your performance." A holographic display materialized above the stage, showing a complex 3-dimensional battlefield. "Your training will culminate in the combat assessment trials. These trials have remained largely unchanged for 300 years, and they represent the gold standard of military evaluation in our galaxy." The display shifted, showing statistics and records. The current record for individual performance in the combat trials belongs to Captain Zethkri of the Mandorian Hegemony, who successfully neutralized 47 simulated enemies before being eliminated. This record has stood for 86 years. Murmurs of appreciation rippled through the crowd. The Mandorians were legendary warriors, evolved from apex predators on a world where only the strongest survived. Their military prowess was unquestioned throughout the galaxy. "During your 6 months of training," Admiral Thexus continued, "you will study tactics, weapons systems, battlefield medicine, and countless other subjects vital to modern warfare. But perhaps most importantly, you will learn to work alongside beings different from yourselves. The Coalition's strength lies not in any single species, but in our unity." The Admiral's multiple eyes fixed on different sections of the audience. "I want to address something that has become increasingly relevant since our newest member species joined us. There are those who believe that coming from a dangerous world automatically makes one dangerous. This is a fallacy. Environmental pressure may shape certain traits, but it does not automatically confer military skill." Maria felt heat rise in her cheeks. She knew the Admiral was talking about humans, about her. The message was clear: being from Earth didn't make her special. Conversely, the Admiral continued, there are those who believe that advanced technology and ancient wisdom are the only paths to military excellence. This, too, is a fallacy. Innovation and adaptability are just as valuable as tradition and experience. The hologram shifted again, showing dormitory assignments. You will find your quarters and schedules in your personal data tablets. Training begins at dawn local time, of course. Dismissed. As the crowd began to disperse, Maria checked her tablet for her room assignment. Dormitory Block C. Level 15. Room 847. She shouldered her bag and began making her way through the maze-like corridors. Hey, human! Maria turned to see 3 students approaching her. The one in front was another Ketheran. Though younger than the one she'd seen at the platform, behind him stood a massive reptilian being she recognized as a Drakmari, and a sleek, cat-like alien with silver fur. I'm Cadet Veltar, the Ketheran said, his 4 arms crossed in what Maria assumed was meant to be an intimidating pose. I was wondering how many Earth Marines does it take to equal 1 real warrior? His companions chuckled, clearly expecting an easy target for their humor. Maria studied them for a moment, noting their postures, their positions relative to each other, and to her. Combat assessment was automatic after so many years in the Corps. I wouldn't know, she replied calmly. I've never met a real warrior to compare myself to. She replied. The insult landed perfectly, causing the Drakmari to hiss in what might have been either amusement or annoyance. Veltar's blue skin darkened slightly, apparently the Ketheran equivalent of a blush. Careful, Deathworlder, he said, stepping closer. You might find academy life challenging. Thanks for the warning, Maria said, turning to continue toward her quarters. I'll try to keep up. She could hear them talking behind her as she walked away, but she ignored it. She'd dealt with bullies before, on more worlds than she cared to count. The key was not to let them see any reaction. Her quarters were small but comfortable, with a bed that adjusted to accommodate different physiologies and a workstation equipped with the latest coalition technology. Her roommate hadn't arrived yet, which gave her time to unpack and review the training schedule on her tablet. Day 1 would begin with physical fitness evaluation, followed by weapons familiarity, testing, basic tactics assessment, and something called species integration dynamics. The schedule was packed from dawn until well past sunset, with only brief breaks for meals. Maria was setting up her few personal belongings when her roommate arrived. The being that walked through the door was unlike anything she'd ever seen, roughly humanoid but covered in what looked like living crystal formations. Light seemed to bend around it in strange ways. Greetings, it said in a voice that sounded like wind chimes. I am Cadet Vex High, of the Silicon Collective. I believe we are to be quarters partners. Staff Sergeant Maria Santos, Earth Marine Corps, Maria replied, offering her hand. Good to meet you. Vex's High stared at the extended hand for a moment before carefully extending what might have been an arm. The contact was surprisingly warm, despite the crystal-like appearance. Your species engages in physical contact as a greeting ritual? Vex High asked. Sometimes, Maria said. It's a way of showing respect and friendliness. Fascinating. My people communicate primarily through light frequency modulation. Physical contact is reserved for intimate moments. Maria pulled her hand back quickly. Oh, sorry, I didn't know. No offense was taken, Vex High assured her, settling onto what Maria assumed was its bed. I am curious about your species' military traditions. The data I have accessed suggests that humans have engaged in warfare for most of their recorded history. That's probably accurate, Maria admitted. We haven't always been good at getting along with each other. Yet you have achieved interstellar cooperation remarkably quickly for such a young species. This seems contradictory. The quote. Maria considered that. Maybe because we've had so much practice at conflict, we've gotten good at recognizing when it's worth avoiding. An intriguing perspective. I look forward to observing your performance during training. That night, Maria lay in her bed staring up at the ceiling display that showed a view of the stars outside the asteroid. Somewhere among those points of light was Earth, where her younger brother was probably just starting his senior year of high school. He'd wanted to follow her into the Marines, but Maria had convinced him to finish his education first. She wondered what he would think of all this, his sister training alongside alien warriors in a school built inside a hollowed-out asteroid. It still felt surreal to her sometimes. Her tablet chimed softly with an incoming message. The sender was listed as Instructor Command Staff, Cadet Santos. The message read, "You are hereby notified that as the sole representative of your species at this academy, your performance will be closely monitored and evaluated not only for your personal advancement, but as an assessment of human military potential within the coalition framework. Standard performance may be insufficient to justify continued human participation in this program. Excellence is expected." Maria stared at the message for several minutes. No pressure at all. She closed the tablet and tried to sleep, but her mind kept racing. Tomorrow would bring the first real tests. The first chance to prove that humans belonged here, among the galaxy's elite warriors. She thought about Admiral Thexus's words about environmental pressure not automatically conferring military skill. He was right, of course. Being from Earth didn't automatically make her a better soldier. But it had made her a different kind of soldier. Humans had spent millennia fighting not just each other, but their own planet predators, diseases, natural disasters, and countless other threats that most coalition species had never faced. The question wasn't whether she was dangerous because she was from a death world. The question was whether that danger could be channeled into something useful. Maria finally drifted off to sleep with the memory of Veltar's question echoing in her mind. How many Earth Marines does it take to equal one real warrior? Tomorrow, she would start finding out. Dawn came early in the artificial day cycle of the academy. Maria was already awake and dressed when the wake-up call sounded throughout the dormitory. Years of Marine training had conditioned her to function on minimal sleep and be ready for anything at a moment's notice. Vex's HFY moved more slowly, its crystalline form seeming to gather light from somewhere before fully activating for the day. "Your species requires so little rest," it observed. "We're adaptable," Maria replied, checking her equipment one last time. "Ready for breakfast?" The mess hall was a marvel of logistics, with food preparation systems designed to accommodate the dietary needs of dozens of different species. Maria grabbed a meal packet labeled Carbon-Based Omnivore, Earth Standard, and found a table. Around her, conversations buzzed in multiple languages and communication methods. She picked up fragments of discussion about the day ahead, speculation about the difficulty of various tests, and more than one mention of the Deathworlder. "Mind if I sit here?" Maria looked up to see a being she didn't recognize roughly her size, with green-scaled skin and large, intelligent eyes. Its uniform marked it as a cadet from the Reptilian Federation. "Please," Maria said, gesturing to an empty chair. "Cadet Zixath," the being introduced itself. "I wanted to meet the human everyone's talking about." "Everyone's talking about me?" Zixath made a sound that might have been laughter. "Word travels fast in a closed environment like this. You're the first human to attend the academy, and some of the other cadets are taking bets on how long you'll last. What are the odds? Not good, I'm afraid. Most think you'll wash out within the first week. A few optimists are giving you a month." Maria took a bite of her food, something that tasted vaguely like chicken but had a texture she couldn't identify. "And what do you think?" "I think anyone who bets against a predator species is making a mistake," Zixath said quietly. "My people know what it's like to be underestimated." After breakfast, all cadets reported to the Physical Fitness Center. The space was enormous, with sections designed for various types of beings, high-gravity zones for species from dense worlds, low-gravity areas for those from lighter planets, and even aquatic sections for amphibious races. Instructor Kulveth was a Ursoid, a member of a species that looked like someone had crossed a bear with an engineer. Standing nearly 9 feet tall and covered in thick brown fur, he commanded attention simply by existing. "Physical fitness," he announced in a voice like gravel, "is the foundation of all military excellence. A warrior's body is their most basic weapon. And like any weapon, it must be maintained and honed." The cadets were divided into groups based on their physiology. Maria found herself in the bipedal carbon-based section, alongside beings from a dozen different worlds. We will begin with basic assessment, Instructor Kolveth continued. Cardiovascular endurance, strength, agility, and reflexes. Each species will be evaluated according to their baseline norms. The first test was a distance run on a track that curved around the entire fitness center. The pace was set at what would be challenging for most coalition species, a steady jog that would push cardiovascular systems without causing injury. Maria settled into the rhythm easily. The artificial gravity was set to Earth standard in this section, which meant she felt completely comfortable. Around her, other cadets began to show signs of strain as the laps accumulated. By the 10th lap, several beings had dropped out. By the 15th, only a handful remained. Maria kept running, her breathing steady and controlled. This was easier than her normal morning workout back on Earth. Human Santos, Instructor Kolveth called out. What is your status? Ready to continue, sir, Maria replied without breaking stride. She could hear whispers from the cadets who had already finished. Some seemed impressed, others skeptical. By the 20th lap, only 3 runners remained: Maria, a tall insectoid being whose species was known for endurance, and a cybernetically enhanced humanoid from the Augmented Collective. The insectoid dropped out at lap 25, clutching at what Maria assumed was its respiratory system. The augmented humanoid made it to lap 30 before its mechanical enhancements began overheating. Maria kept running. Her body had adapted long ago to the demands of carrying heavy equipment across hostile terrain under extreme conditions. A simple run on a track was almost relaxing by comparison. Human Santos. Instructor Kolveth called again at lap 35. How much longer can you maintain this pace? As long as necessary, sir, Maria replied. She wasn't even breathing hard yet. The fitness center had grown quiet, except for the sound of Maria's footsteps on the track. Every cadet and instructor was watching now, waiting to see when the human would finally reach her limit. At lap 40, Instructor Kolveth made a note on his tablet and raised his hand. Sufficient data collected. You may stop. Maria slowed to a walk, cooling down properly as she'd been trained. Around the track, aliens stared at her with expressions she was learning to recognize as surprise and reassessment. Impressive endurance capacity, Instructor Kolveth noted. However, endurance is only one component of physical fitness. The next test was strength, specifically how much weight each cadet could move in various configurations. Again, the standards were adjusted for species norms. Maria approached the strength testing apparatus, a sophisticated machine that could configure itself for different body types and leverage points. The starting weight was set at what should have been challenging for a being of her size and apparent muscle mass. She completed the first set easily. The machine automatically added more weight. She completed that set too. More weight was added. This continued for several minutes, with the machine steadily increasing the load and Maria consistently meeting the challenge. Around her, other cadets completed their own tests and gathered to watch. Most curious, she heard Vexhai comment to another cadet. The human appears to be operating well within her comfort zone. Finally, the machine reached a weight that actually challenged Maria. She completed the set, but with visible effort. The machine added more weight. She failed to complete a full repetition. Instructor Kolveth checked his readings and made another note. Strength levels approximately 3 times baseline expectations for your apparent mass. Unusual, but not unprecedented. The agility test involved navigating an obstacle course that reconfigured itself in real time, requiring quick reflexes and spatial reasoning. The course was designed to challenge beings with various movement capabilities. Some obstacles favored climbers, others required jumping, and still others demanded precise balance. Maria had always been good at this kind of challenge. The Marine Corps had drilled her extensively in urban combat scenarios, which meant she was comfortable moving through complex 3-dimensional environments under pressure. She started the course at a steady pace, analyzing each obstacle as she approached it. The first few were straightforward walls to climb, gaps to jump, beams to balance across. Standard military obstacle course fare, just with more interesting geometry. Then the course started changing around her. Walls shifted height, platforms moved position, and gaps opened and closed according to some pre-programmed sequence. This was where the real challenge began. Maria adapted quickly, reading the patterns and timing her movements to match the course's rhythm. She began moving faster, confident in her ability to predict the changes. Behind her, she could hear other cadets struggling with obstacles that had been simple moments before. She reached the end of the course with a time that put her in the top 10% of all previous participants, according to the display board. More importantly, she had completed it without any serious mistakes or falls. The final test was reflexes, specifically reaction time to unexpected stimuli. Cadets were placed in a chamber where holographic targets would appear at random intervals and locations. The goal was to identify and touch as many targets as possible within a set time limit. This was where Maria expected to struggle. Most coalition species had better eyesight than humans, and several had reaction times that were measurably faster. She entered the chamber knowing she would likely rank near the bottom of this particular assessment. The test began, and targets started appearing throughout the chamber. Some high, some low, some moving, some stationary. Maria began touching them as quickly as she could, using a system she'd learned in combat training. Identify the threat, assess the priority, engage the target, move to the next. What she hadn't expected was that her combat experience would give her an edge. While other cadets focused on pure reaction speed, Maria was unconsciously using pattern recognition and threat assessment protocols. She wasn't just reacting to targets, she was predicting where they would appear based on the system's behavior. When the test ended, she had successfully identified and touched 87% of all targets. This put her in the top 5% of all participants. Despite her supposedly inferior human reflexes, Instructor Kolveth reviewed the results with an expression that might have been surprise on his ursine features. "Human Santos," he called out. "Approach for individual assessment." Maria walked over, aware that every other cadet in the facility was watching. "Your performance today was unexpected," the instructor said. "Based on the data we have about human baseline capabilities, you should have performed adequately but not exceptionally. Instead, you have achieved scores that place you among the top performers in this academy's recent history." He paused, studying his tablet. "More concerning, you appeared to be operating well within your capabilities throughout most of the testing. Were you holding back?" Maria considered her answer carefully. "No, sir. I was performing to the best of my ability within the parameters of each test." "Interesting. Tell me, what is your training background prior to arriving at this academy?" 12 years active duty, sir. Multiple combat deployments. Advanced urban warfare specialist, with additional certifications in hostile environment operations, long-range reconnaissance, and counterinsurgency tactics. The instructor's eyes widened slightly. 12 years of active combat experience? How old are you? 32, sir. And your species reaches full physical maturity at what age? Approximately 18, sir. Instructor Kolveth made several more notes on his tablet. "I see. And how much of your active service included actual combat operations?" Maria did the math in her head. "Approximately 8 years, sir." Various theaters. The fitness center had gone completely quiet. In most coalition species, warriors trained for decades before seeing actual combat. And many never engaged in real warfare at all. The idea of someone with 8 years of combat experience was almost unheard of. 8 years, the instructor repeated. "Against what type of opponents?" "Initially, other humans, sir. More recently, various hostile alien species encountered during exploration and first contact situations." This caused an audible stir among the watching cadets. First contact situations were notoriously dangerous, and humans had apparently been fighting their way through them for years. "I understand," Instructor Kolveth said finally. "Cadet Santos, you are excused from this evaluation. Please report to Tactical Assessment in Training Bay 7. As Maria gathered her gear and headed for the exit, she could hear conversations starting up behind her in dozens of different languages. The whispers were no longer dismissive, they carried a note of respect, and perhaps a little concern. She was beginning to understand that the Academy's assessment of human capabilities might have been based on incomplete information. The galaxy was about to learn something about her species that bureaucratic reports and diplomatic briefings had failed to convey. Humans weren't just from a dangerous world. They were a species that had been at war, in one form or another, for their entire recorded history. And now one of their warriors was here, among the finest military minds the galaxy had to offer. The real test was about to begin. Training Bay 7 was unlike anything Maria had seen before. The space was vast and completely reconfigurable, with walls that could shift position, floors that could change elevation, and ceiling sections that could lower to create confined spaces. Holographic projectors were mounted at every angle, capable of generating environments from dozens of different worlds. Instructor Velnari was a Cylonian, a species known for their tactical brilliance and strategic thinking. She stood barely 4 feet tall, with large, multifaceted eyes, and 4 delicate arms that moved with precise, calculated gestures. Despite her diminutive size, she commanded immediate respect from every cadet who entered her domain. Tactical assessment, she announced in a voice that carried despite its softness, is not about physical capability. It is about the mind's ability to process information, identify patterns, and make decisions under pressure. In this bay, your body's limitations are irrelevant. Only your thinking matters. The dozen cadets in this session included representatives from most of the Coalition's major military powers. Besides Maria, there was Veltar the Keitharan, who had confronted her the previous day, along with a Mandorian warrior named Drakth, whose species held the current combat records. A crystalline being called Quexvi represented the Silicon Collective's military branch, while several others came from species Maria was still learning to identify. Your first exercise, Instructor Velnari continued, will be a classic scenario. You are commanding a patrol unit that has encountered unknown enemy forces. Your mission parameters will be displayed as the scenario progresses. Success will be measured not by victory, but by the quality of your decision-making process. The bay transformed around them, generating a convincing simulation of an alien forest. The trees were strange, more like crystalline growths than earth vegetation, but the tactical principles remained the same: cover, concealment, fields of fire, avenues of approach. Cadet Drakth, Instructor Velnari called out. You will run the first scenario. The Mandorian stepped forward confidently. His species had been warriors for millennia, and their tactical doctrine was taught throughout the galaxy as a model of military excellence. Drakth was nearly 7 feet tall, with scales that shifted color to match his surroundings and reflexes that were legendary even among predator species. The scenario began simply enough. Drakth's virtual patrol encountered signs of enemy activity tracks, discarded equipment, evidence of recent passage. The Mandorian responded by deploying his forces in a classic search pattern, maintaining communication protocols, and advancing with appropriate caution. Then the ambush hit. Virtual enemies opened fire from concealed positions throughout the forest. The attack was sophisticated and well coordinated, clearly designed to test a student's ability to respond to unexpected threats. Drakth reacted with textbook precision: immediate covering fire, tactical withdrawal to defensible positions, and coordinated counter-assault. His virtual patrol fought bravely, but the scenario was designed to be unwinnable through conventional tactics. One by one, his soldiers fell to enemy fire. Drakth himself lasted nearly 10 minutes before his position was overrun. Acceptable performance, Instructor Velnari noted, making entries on her datapad. Standard Mandorian tactics, executed with appropriate skill. Next scenario will increase in complexity. 3 more cadets ran variations of the same basic situation. Each performed competently, using the tactical doctrine of their respective species. The Keitharan relied on superior technology and coordination. A cadet from the Epsilon Collective used mathematical probability to guide his decisions. Another approached the problem as an engineering challenge, building defensive positions. All of them eventually failed, as was intended. The scenarios were designed to push cadets beyond their comfort zones and force them to think creatively under pressure. Cadet Santos, Instructor Velnari called. Your turn. Maria stepped into the center of the bay as the environment reconfigured itself. This time, the setting was an urban environment: ruined buildings, debris-filled streets, and countless places for enemies to hide. It looked remarkably similar to some of the places she'd fought during her years of active service. Her virtual patrol consisted of 8 soldiers from various coalition species, each with different capabilities and limitations. The mission parameters appeared on her tactical display. Investigate reports of enemy activity in the sector and gather intelligence. Maria began by studying the terrain carefully. Urban environments were dangerous, specifically because they offered so many advantages to defenders and ambushers. Every window could hide a sniper, every doorway could conceal explosives, and every intersection represented a potential kill zone. Advance by fire teams, she instructed her virtual squad. Overwatch positions at 50-meter intervals. Nobody moves without cover. Her approach was methodical and cautious. Where other cadets had focused on speed and aggression, Maria emphasized coordination and mutual support. Her years of urban warfare experience had taught her that patience was often more valuable than courage. The first enemy contact came from a sniper in a building overlooking the main avenue. Instead of immediately assaulting the position, Maria had her team set up a crossfire and systematically cleared the building floor by floor. It took longer, but it was safer. Interesting approach, she heard Instructor Velnari comment to another instructor who had joined the observation area. Most cadets attempt to engage the sniper directly. As the scenario progressed, Maria continued to demonstrate tactical principles that seemed foreign to her alien classmates. She used indirect approaches rather than frontal assaults. She emphasized intelligence, gathering over immediate action. Most importantly, she treated every decision as if real lives were at stake. When the inevitable ambush came, Maria was ready for it. Her overwatching teams had identified most of the enemy positions before the shooting started. Her soldiers were spread out and in good cover. The attack that had devastated other cadets' forces was met with disciplined, effective resistance. But Maria wasn't content with just surviving the ambush. As soon as her forces had stabilized their positions, she began a coordinated counterattack that used the enemy's own positions against them. She had identified their escape routes and set up fields of fire that made withdrawal costly. The scenario ran for nearly 20 minutes, twice as long as any previous attempt before Instructor Velnari finally called a halt. Sufficient data collected, the instructor announced. Scenario complete. The virtual environment faded away, leaving the cadets standing in the neutral gray of the training bay. Maria could feel her classmates staring at her with expressions that ranged from surprise to calculation. Cadet Santos, Instructor Velnari said, please explain your tactical decision-making process. Maria had been through enough after-action reviews to know what was expected. I approached the scenario as a real combat situation. Instructor, my primary goal was mission accomplishment, with minimal friendly casualties. I prioritized intelligence gathering and force protection over speed of advance. And the counterattack phase? Once my forces were secure, I identified the enemy's most likely withdrawal routes and established blocking positions. The goal was to prevent them from breaking contact and potentially regrouping for another attack. Instructor Velnari made several notes. Your approach was markedly different from standard coalition tactical doctrine. Where did you learn these methods? Combat experience, Instructor. 8 years in various theaters against multiple enemy types. The silence that followed was profound. In most coalition military academies, instructors and cadets alike were working from theoretical knowledge and limited practical experience. Real warfare was relatively rare in the galaxy, and most species preferred diplomatic solutions to conflicts. 8 years, Instructor Velnari repeated. Against what classifications of opponents? Initially insurgent and irregular forces, Instructor. Later, first contact scenarios with unknown alien capabilities, and recently, hostile species with advanced technology and coordinated military doctrine. Drax, the Mandorian, stepped forward. You speak of fighting other humans. This suggests your species engages in internal warfare. Yes, Maria replied simply. We've been doing that for most of our recorded history. This admission caused an uncomfortable stir among the cadets. Most coalition species had achieved interstellar travel only after developing mature, stable civilizations. The idea of a spacefaring species that still fought wars among itself was disturbing. And you have personally participated in these conflicts? Quexv, the crystalline being, asked. Multiple tours of duty across various theaters and conflict types, Maria confirmed. Urban warfare, desert operations, jungle campaigns, Arctic conditions, and space-based actions. Veltar, the Ketheran, was staring at her with an expression she couldn't read. How many? How many enemy combatants have you personally engaged? The question hung in the air like a physical presence. Most coalition military personnel would go their entire careers without firing a shot in anger. The idea of someone who had engaged in regular combat was almost incomprehensible. I don't keep count, Maria said quietly. That's not healthy. Instructor Velnari cleared her throat. We will move on to the next phase of assessment. Weapons familiarization and marksmanship evaluation. Please follow me to the range facilities. The weapons range was another marvel of engineering, with firing positions that could accommodate beings of wildly different sizes and physiologies. The targets were holographic, but the weapons were real, though equipped with monitoring systems that tracked every shot fired. Coalition standard small arms, Instructor Velnari explained, gesturing to a rack of weapons that looked like they'd been designed by committee. These weapons are optimized for use by multiple species, sacrificing some efficiency for universal compatibility. Maria examined the weapons carefully. They were clearly advanced energy-based rather than kinetic, with sophisticated targeting systems and multiple firing modes, but they also felt sterile, lacking the purposeful simplicity of human military hardware. Each cadet will fire a qualification course, the instructor continued. Targets will appear at various ranges and positions. You will have 30 seconds to engage each target sequence. Scoring is based on accuracy and time to target. Drocht went first, handling the weapon with practiced ease. His scores were impressive. The Mandorians were known for their marksmanship, and he didn't disappoint. Quick target acquisition, steady hands, and the kind of natural shooting ability that took years to develop. The other cadets performed competently, though none matched the Mandorian scores. When it was Maria's turn, she approached the firing line with careful attention to the weapon's balance and controls. The first target appeared a simple bullseye at medium range. Maria raised the weapon, acquired the target through the sophisticated sight system, and fired. Dead center. More targets appeared. At different ranges and angles. Some moved, others appeared for only brief moments. Maria engaged each one with methodical precision, treating it like the qualification courses she'd run hundreds of times throughout her career. But there was something different about her technique that the other cadets couldn't help but notice. Where they relied heavily on the weapon's targeting systems and computer assistance, Maria seemed to use them as backup to her own natural ability. Her movements were smooth and economical, without the slight hesitation that came from depending on technology. When the course ended, her scores were displayed on the range board. Perfect accuracy, with engagement times that were consistently faster than the other cadets, despite her unfamiliarity with the specific weapon system. Exceptional marksmanship, Instructor Velnari noted. Have you used coalition weapons before? No, Instructor, but the basic principles are universal. Sight alignment, trigger control, breath management, follow-through. Yet you achieved faster target engagement than cadets who have trained with these weapons for months. Maria considered her answer. I've been shooting since I was 8 years old, Instructor. Different weapons, same fundamentals. 8 years old? Veltar interrupted. Your species trains children? In weapons use. In my case, yes. My father was military, and he believed in early training. Started me with simple firearms, and worked up to more complex systems as I got older. The alien cadets exchanged glances that Maria was learning to recognize as concern. The picture they were getting of human society was apparently quite different from what they'd expected. Moving on, Instructor Velnari said quickly. Team weapons exercise. You will work in groups of 4 to engage a coordinated target array. Communication and cooperation will be as important as individual marksmanship. Maria found herself grouped with Veltar, Quexvi, and a cadet from the Hydran Federation named Slicksquay, who communicated primarily through bioluminescent displays. The exercise was complex, requiring the team to engage multiple target sequences simultaneously while supporting each other's movements. It was the kind of training that prepared cadets for real battlefield coordination. "I suggest we establish fireteam protocols," Maria offered. 2 shooters, 2 spotters, rotating assignments based on target presentation. Veltar, despite his earlier antagonism, seemed willing to listen. "Explain your reasoning." Overlapping fields of fire provide mutual support and redundancy. If one shooter has a malfunction or misses, the backup is already in position to engage. They ran the exercise, with Maria calling adjustments and coordinating their movements. Her experience in small unit tactics showed immediately she knew how to read the developing situation and position the team for maximum effectiveness. Their scores were significantly higher than the previous groups, despite being thrown together at random. More importantly, they had worked together smoothly, with each member understanding their role and responsibility. "Efficient coordination," Instructor Velnari observed. "Cadet Santos, you assumed leadership of the group without being designated as team leader. Explain." Quote, "Someone needed to coordinate our actions, Instructor. I had relevant experience, so I stepped up. And the others accepted your authority without question?" Veltar spoke up. Her tactical knowledge was clearly superior. It would have been illogical to ignore her expertise. After the weapons training, the cadets were given a brief break before the day's final exercise. Maria found herself sitting alone in a corner of the rest area, reviewing the day's events and preparing for whatever came next. Human, she looked up to see Drac approaching. The massive Mandorian settled onto a bench nearby, his scales shifting to a neutral gray pattern. "You fight differently than we expected," he said without preamble. "How so?" "Our intelligence briefings suggested that humans were aggressive and reckless in combat. What I observed today was the opposite. Calculated, patient, methodical." 2. Maria nodded. "Aggression has its place, but it's a tool, not a strategy. Recklessness gets people killed. Your species' approach to warfare is thorough. We've had a lot of practice." Drac was quiet for a moment, his large eyes studying her intently. "In Mandorian culture, we have a saying: the warrior who has seen 1 battle knows fear. The warrior who has seen 100 battles knows victory. How many battles have you seen, Maria Santos?" The use of her name rather than rank was significant, she realized. It suggested a level of respect that hadn't been there before. "Enough to know that the best victory is the one you don't have to fight for," she replied. "Wise words. I begin to understand why your species was admitted to the coalition despite your short time among the stars." Before Maria could respond, Instructor Velnari's voice called all cadets back to the training area. The final exercise was about to begin. "Advanced tactical simulation," the instructor announced as they gathered in the bay. "You will work in 2 teams of 6. Each team will attempt to achieve specific objectives while preventing the other team from achieving theirs. This is as close to actual combat as we can safely simulate." The teams were assigned randomly, with Maria finding herself grouped with Drac, Veltar, Slicksquay, and 2 cadets she hadn't worked with before. Their opponents included Quexevi and several of the stronger performers from the day's exercises. "Your objective," Instructor Velnari continued, "is to locate and secure 3 intelligence packages hidden somewhere in the simulation environment. The opposing team has the same objective. You may use any tactics you deem appropriate, but remember this is a training exercise. Excessive force or dangerous actions will result in immediate failure." The simulation environment materialized around them, a complex facility with multiple levels, interconnected chambers, and limited sightlines. It was the kind of space that could hide 1,000 ambushes or provide excellent defensive positions. "Team leaders?" the instructor asked. Without discussion, both teams looked to their most experienced members. Maria found herself designated as leader for her team, while the opposing team chose a veteran Mandorian cadet named Crixva. 5 minutes to plan, Instructor Velnari announced. "Exercise begins on my mark." Maria gathered her team in a tight circle. Okay, here's what we're dealing with. Complex environment, limited visibility, mobile objectives, and an opposing force with unknown capabilities. Questions. Questions. Rules of engagement? Drax asked. Non-lethal simulation, weapons only. Target is mission completion, not enemy elimination. But defending ourselves is authorized. Search pattern? Veltar inquired. We'll use Leapfrog Advance. 2-person teams, with one team providing overwatch while the other moves. Methodical search. But we need to be fast. The other team is looking for the same objectives. She studied the layout on her tactical display. Drax, you and Veltar take the upper level. Move fast but stay quiet. Slix K and HFY, you're with me on the main level. Zorven, you provide central overwatch from that elevated position there. What if we make contact with the opposing force? One of the cadets asked. Avoid if possible, engage if necessary. Remember, we're not trying to defeat them. We're trying to complete the mission faster than they can. Mark, Instructor Velnari called out. The exercise began immediately. Maria's team moved with practiced coordination, using the principles she'd drilled into them during their brief planning session. They advanced carefully but steadily, searching methodically for the hidden objectives. Contact came sooner than expected. Slix K spotted movement in an adjacent chamber and signaled for a halt. Through the transparent walls, they could see 3 members of the opposing team setting up what looked like an ambush position near one of the likely objective locations. They're trying to control the choke points, Maria whispered into her comm unit. Smart. Drax, what's your status? Clear on upper level. No contacts. One possible objective location identified. Copy. Secure that objective and continue search. We'll deal with the situation down here. Maria studied the tactical situation. The opposing team had good position and clear sightlines. A direct assault would be costly and probably unsuccessful, but she hadn't survived 8 years of combat by taking unnecessary risks. Slix Quay, can you create a distraction without exposing yourself? The bioluminescent alien nodded, then began generating light patterns that would be visible from the opposing team's position. As expected, they shifted their attention toward the source of the lights. Maria and her remaining teammate used the distraction to circle around behind their opponents. It was a classic flanking maneuver, made possible by the complex 3-dimensional nature of the environment. Contact, Drax's voice reported over the comm. Opposition force, on upper level. Engaging. The sound of simulated weapons fire echoed through the facility. Maria's team was now split between 2 separate engagements, which was exactly what she'd hoped to avoid. Slixqua, maintain position and provide covering fire. HFY, with me. They moved quickly but quietly, using their knowledge of the opposing team's position to approach from an unexpected angle. When they finally engaged, the fight was brief, 3 quick shots and 2 opponents down. 2 objectives secured, came Drax's voice. Opposition neutralized on upper level. Copy. 1 objective remaining. All teams converge on the lower level. There. The final objective was hidden in the most defensible part of the facility, a chamber with only 1 entrance and excellent sightlines for defenders. Maria expected the remaining opposition forces to be waiting for them there. She was right. 3 hostiles in defensive positions, Veltar reported from his scouting position. Good cover, overlapping fields of fire. Direct assault would be costly. Maria considered their options. Time was running out, but a frontal assault would likely result in significant casualties for her team. There had to be another way. Drax, can you provide suppressing fire from that upper position? Affirmative. Clear shot into the chamber. Good. Everyone else, prepare for coordinated assault on my mark. HFY. Do you have any breaching charges in your simulation equipment? The alien checked his gear and nodded. 3 charges, various sizes. Perfect. Here's what we're going to do. The plan was complex but achievable. Drax would provide suppressing fire to keep the defenders focused on the main entrance. HFY would use his breaching charges to create an alternative entry point. The rest of the team would assault through both openings simultaneously. It required precise timing and coordination, exactly the kind of small unit tactics that Maria had learned through years of actual combat experience. Execute. The plan worked flawlessly. Drakt's suppressing fire forced the defenders to take cover, while HFY's breaching charge opened a hole in the chamber's rear wall. Maria led the assault through the new entrance, while Veltar and Slicksky came through the main door. The defending team never had a chance to coordinate their response. Caught between two attack points and unable to cover both effectively, they were eliminated in seconds. Final objective secured, Maria announced. Exercise complete. The simulation environment faded away, leaving all 12 cadets standing in the neutral training bay. Several of the opposing team members looked stunned. They had been outmaneuvered and outfought by tactics they'd never encountered before. Exercise time, 14 minutes, 37 seconds, Instructor Velnari announced. All objectives secured with minimal simulated casualties. Team 1. Victory. She approached Maria's team for the after-action review. Explain your tactical approach. Cadet Santos. Speed and coordination, Instructor. We identified that both teams were pursuing the same objectives. So, time was critical. Rather than getting bogged down in prolonged engagements, we used maneuver and fireteam tactics to achieve local superiority at each objective point. And the final assault? Classic two-pronged attack. Create a breaching point to divide the enemy's attention, then assault both positions simultaneously. They couldn't cover both approaches effectively. Instructor Velnari made extensive notes. Your team demonstrated unusual coordination for cadets who had never worked together before. Clear communication and defined roles, Instructor. Everyone knew their job and trusted their teammates to do theirs. After the official debrief, the cadets were dismissed for the day. As they filed out of the training bay, Maria could hear conversations starting up in multiple languages. The whispers were no longer about whether the human would last. They were about what other surprises Earth's military traditions might produce. Drakt fell into step beside her as they walked toward the dormitory areas. Your species has a different approach to warfare than we expected, he said. How so? We fight for honor, for glory, for the pride of victory. You fight to accomplish the mission and bring everyone home alive. Maria considered that. Both approaches have their place, but I learned a long time ago that dead heroes don't get to see their families again. Perhaps that is why your species survived on a death world, Drakt observed. You learned to value survival over glory. That evening, Maria sat in her quarters reviewing the day's events with HFY. The crystalline being had performed adequately in the training exercises, but seemed more interested in analyzing and understanding than in competing. Your tactical knowledge appears to exceed that of most instructors at this academy, HFY observed. Experience is a good teacher, Maria replied. Sometimes, the only teacher. I am curious about something. Your species developed interstellar travel very recently, yet your military capabilities appear to be extremely advanced. How is this possible? Maria thought about how to explain humanity's peculiar history. We've been fighting each other for thousands of years. We got very good at it. When we finally stopped long enough to reach the stars, we brought all that knowledge with us. Most species develop space travel only after achieving internal peace. Your path was different. Yeah, it was. Her tablet chimed with an incoming message. This one was from Admiral Thexus himself, Cadet Santos. It read, Your performance in today's assessments has generated significant interest among the Academy's senior staff. A special evaluation has been scheduled for tomorrow at 0800 hours. Report to Combat Assessment Bay 1. Formal evaluation parameters will be provided at that time. Maria stared at the message for a long moment. A special evaluation meant they were accelerating her assessment timeline, possibly to determine whether she belonged at the Academy at all, or whether she represented something unprecedented that required special handling. Problem? HFY asked, noticing her expression. Maybe. Or maybe an opportunity. That night, as she tried to sleep, Maria found herself thinking about home. Somewhere among the stars visible through the viewport was Earth. where humanity continued its long, complex journey from a species that fought itself to one that might help defend the galaxy. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and new opportunities to prove that humans belonged among the Coalition's finest warriors. But tonight, she could finally allow herself to believe that she was representing her species well. The question was no longer whether one human could keep up with the galaxy's elite military forces. The question was becoming what would happen when the galaxy learned what humans were really capable of. She was about to find out. Combat Assessment Bay 1 was the largest training facility in the Academy, designed to accommodate full-scale battle simulations involving hundreds of participants. As Maria entered the massive space, she could see observation galleries arranged in tiers around the perimeter, already filling with cadets and instructors. Admiral Thexis stood at the central control station, alongside Instructor Velnari and several other senior staff members she didn't recognize. Their expressions were carefully neutral, but she could sense the tension in the air. "Cadet Santos," Admiral Thexis called out as she approached. "Thank you for attending this special evaluation." "Yes, sir. What are the parameters?" "That is, unusual," the Admiral replied. "Based on your performance over the past 2 days, several questions have arisen regarding human military capabilities. This assessment will attempt to address those questions directly." He gestured toward the empty training bay. "You will face a modified version of our standard combat assessment trial. However, the scenario has been adjusted to test specific tactical situations that your species might encounter in Coalition service." Maria nodded, waiting for more details. Around the observation galleries, she could see more and more spectators arriving. Word of the special evaluation had apparently spread throughout the Academy. "The scenario," Admiral Thexis continued, "involves a reconnaissance mission that has encountered unexpected opposition. You will command a small unit that becomes separated from main forces and must complete the mission objective while avoiding or engaging superior enemy numbers." Instructor Velnari stepped forward with a tactical tablet. "Intelligence suggests enemy forces in the area number approximately 30 combat units, with modern equipment and coordinated command structure. Your simulated squad consists of 8 Coalition soldiers with standard armament." "Rules of engagement, sir?" "Mission completion is primary objective," Admiral Thexis replied. "However, preservation of friendly forces is also critical. The scenario will run until either the mission is completed, your force is eliminated, or you choose to withdraw." Maria studied the preliminary data on the tablet. The scenario looked challenging but achievable, with proper tactics and coordination. "Will my simulated squad respond to my commands?" "Yes. They have been programmed with realistic capabilities and limitations based on Coalition military standards. They will follow orders unless those orders would result in obvious suicide." "Understood, sir. When do we begin?" "Immediately. Take your position in the center of the bay." As Maria walked to the starting position, she could hear conversations buzzing throughout the observation galleries. In multiple languages and communication methods, the Academy's cadets and staff were discussing what they were about to witness. The bay transformed around her, generating a convincing simulation of a hostile alien world. Rocky terrain with limited vegetation, multiple ridgelines offering both cover and observation points, and a distant facility that presumably contained her objective. Her 8 simulated squad members materialized nearby, representing various Coalition species. "Mission briefing," came Admiral Thexis's voice over the comm system. "Enemy forces have occupied a communication relay station that is vital to Coalition operations in this sector. Your objective is to gather intelligence on enemy capabilities and, if possible, destroy or disable the facility. Enemy strength is estimated at 30 combat units, with supporting equipment 200. Maria studied the terrain carefully. The target facility was situated in a valley, with good natural defense positions and multiple escape routes for the defenders. A direct assault would be costly and probably unsuccessful, but she hadn't survived 8 years of combat by attempting direct assaults against superior forces. "Squad, sound off," she ordered. Her simulated soldiers reported in 2 Kitharon technicians, 2 Mandorian warriors, 1 Volani heavy weapons specialist, 1 Cylonian communications expert, one Silicon Collective engineer, and one Drakmari reconnaissance specialist. A diverse group with varying capabilities. Here's the situation, Maria began, gathering her virtual team around her. We're outnumbered approximately 4-1, operating in hostile territory with limited support options. Our job is to complete the mission and get everyone home alive. She activated her tactical display, studying the approaches to the target facility. Standard coalition doctrine would suggest calling for reinforcements or attempting orbital bombardment. We're going to try something different. Orders? Asked the Mandorian team leader. First, we gather intelligence. I want to know exactly what we're facing before we commit to any action. Drakmari. Take point for reconnaissance. Cylonian. Establish communications watch. Everyone else, we're going to move to high ground and observe. The team began moving, using proper tactical spacing and overwatch procedures. Maria had drilled these principles into countless human units, but it was interesting to see how coalition species adapted to the concepts. The reconnaissance phase took nearly an hour of simulated time. Maria's virtual scouts reported back with detailed information about enemy positions, patrol patterns, defensive preparations, and the facility's layout. As the intelligence picture developed, she began formulating a plan. 32 enemy contacts confirmed, she reported to the observation team. Defensive positions are strong, but they have some vulnerabilities we can exploit. What is your assessment, Cadet Santos? Admiral Thexus asked. Direct assault would result in unacceptable casualties, sir. But the mission is achievable using alternative tactics. Explain. Maria activated the tactical display so the observers could see her analysis. The enemy has positioned their forces to defend against conventional attacks from the most likely approach routes. They're expecting us to follow standard coalition tactical doctrine. She highlighted several positions on the map, but they've left several observation points unmanned, assuming that no one would attempt to approach from those directions. They're thinking like coalition forces, they're not thinking like humans. In the observation gallery, she could see cadets and instructors leaning forward to study her plan. What she was proposing was unlike anything in standard military doctrine. Phase 1, she continued. We eliminate their observation posts using stealth and precision weapons. This will create gaps in their sensor coverage. The first phase took 2 hours of careful movement and coordinated action. Maria's team used every piece of cover and concealment available, approaching the enemy positions from unexpected angles and eliminating sentries without raising alarms. The observers watched in fascination as Maria demonstrated principles that were foreign to coalition military thinking. Instead of relying on superior firepower or technology, she was using patience, stealth, and detailed knowledge of enemy behavior patterns. 7 enemy contacts eliminated, she reported. No alarms raised. Proceeding to Phase 2. Phase 2 involves psychological warfare, Maria explained to her virtual squad. We're going to make them think they're facing a much larger force than they actually are. What followed was a masterclass in unconventional tactics. Maria's team set up multiple false positions, used electronic warfare to simulate larger unit communications, and created the impression of coordinated attacks from several different directions simultaneously. The enemy force began responding exactly as Maria had predicted. They consolidated their positions, called for reinforcements that didn't exist, and started making defensive decisions based on incomplete information. They're reacting to threats that aren't there, Maria explained to the observers. Human military doctrine emphasizes deception and misdirection. Make your enemy fight the battle you want them to fight, not the battle they're prepared for. By the end of Phase 2, the enemy force had repositioned themselves to defend against multiple phantom threats, leaving their actual defensive positions weakened and disorganized. Phase 3, Maria announced. We take the objective. The final assault was a thing of beauty. Maria's team struck at precisely the moment when enemy forces were most dispersed and confused. Using coordinated attacks from multiple directions, they overwhelmed individual defensive positions before the enemy could organize an effective response. Most importantly, they achieved the mission objective, accessing the communication facility and downloading critical intelligence, while the enemy was still trying to understand what was happening. Mission complete, Maria reported. Objective secured, intelligence gathered, facility disabled. Casualty report. 0 friendly losses. 28 enemy eliminated or neutralized. 4 enemy withdrawn to secondary positions. The combat bay fell silent as the simulation ended. In the observation galleries, hundreds of cadets and instructors sat in stunned silence, trying to process what they had just witnessed. Admiral Thexis approached Maria's position, his expression unreadable. "Cadet Santos, please explain your tactical approach." "Asymmetric warfare, sir. When facing superior numbers, you don't fight the battle your enemy wants to fight. You use your advantages to create situations where numerical superiority becomes irrelevant." "And what advantages did you identify in this scenario?" "Mobility, stealth, intelligence gathering, and psychological warfare." The enemy was prepared for a conventional coalition assault. They weren't prepared for human military doctrine. Instructor Velnari stepped forward with her evaluation tablet. "Your approach violated several established tactical principles. You ignored standard engagement protocols, failed to request available support, and employed methods not taught in any coalition military academy." "Yes, ma'am. Human military doctrine often involves unconventional approaches. The results, however, are undeniable. You achieved complete mission success against odds that our models suggested were impossible to overcome." Admiral Thexis studied the tactical display showing Maria's plan. "Cadet Santos, you eliminated or neutralized 28 enemy combatants using a force of 8. That represents a combat effectiveness ratio that exceeds anything in our historical records." "It's not about the ratio, sir. It's about fighting smart instead of fighting hard." From the observation gallery, a voice called out Veltar, the Kitharan who had initially challenged her. "Admiral, request permission to ask a question." "Granted, Cadet Veltar." "Cadet Santos, in your opinion, how many enemy combatants could one Earth Marine engage effectively using these tactics?" The question hung in the air like a physical presence. It was the question that had started this entire evaluation. The question that went to the heart of human military capabilities. Maria considered her answer carefully. "That depends on the tactical situation, available equipment, terrain, enemy capabilities, and mission parameters. But with proper preparation and favorable conditions." She paused, doing calculations in her head based on real-world experience. A single Marine with adequate intelligence and appropriate support could potentially neutralize a force 10 to 15 times their size, assuming the enemy follows conventional tactical doctrine. The silence that followed was profound. If Maria was correct, it meant that human military personnel operated at effectiveness levels that dwarfed anything the coalition had previously encountered. "Explain that assessment," Admiral Thexis requested. "Human military doctrine emphasizes individual initiative, adaptability, and unconventional thinking. We train for scenarios where we're outnumbered, outgunned, and operating without support. Our entire tactical philosophy is based on achieving victory through superior decision-making rather than superior force." She gestured toward the tactical display. "What you saw today was a relatively simple application of principles that every human Marine learns during basic training. Force multiplication through intelligence, deception, and precise application of violence." Drax stood up in the observation gallery. "Admiral, request permission to ask a follow-up question." "Granted." "Cadet Santos, you have described these tactics as basic human military doctrine. Are you suggesting that all Earth Marines possess these capabilities?" "All Marines receive this training, yes. Individual skill levels vary based on experience and aptitude, but the fundamental principles are universal in human military forces." The implications of that statement rippled through the observation galleries like a shockwave. If every human Marine possessed even a fraction of the capabilities they had just witnessed, it meant that Earth's military potential was far beyond anything the Coalition had imagined. Admiral Thexis made several notes on his evaluation tablet. "Cadet Santos, you mentioned that today's demonstration represented basic human military doctrine. What would you consider advanced human tactics?" Maria thought about some of the operations she'd participated in during her career: deep reconnaissance missions, hostage rescue operations, counterinsurgency campaigns. Advanced tactics would involve longer-term operations, multiple coordinated units, extensive intelligence networks, and operations in denied territory. The kind of missions that take months to plan and weeks to execute. And you have experience with such operations? Yes, sir. Multiple theaters, various mission types. The Admiral exchanged glances with his staff. I believe we need to reassess our understanding of human military capabilities. From the gallery, another voice called out. This time it was Instructor Kolveth, the massive Ursoid who had supervised the physical fitness evaluations. Admiral, request permission to make an observation. Granted. Based on Cadet Santos's performance over the past 3 days, I believe we may need to fundamentally revise our evaluation criteria for human personnel. Her capabilities consistently exceed our established baselines by significant margins. Agreed, Admiral Thexus replied. Cadet Santos, you are hereby withdrawn from standard training protocols. Effective immediately, you will be placed in an accelerated assessment program designed to fully evaluate human military potential. He paused, studying his notes. Additionally, I am recommending to Coalition Command that we request additional human military personnel for evaluation. If your capabilities are representative of your species' military tradition, we may need to completely restructure our understanding of Earth's strategic value to the Coalition. As the official evaluation concluded, cadets and instructors began filing out of the observation galleries. But many stopped to speak with Maria. Their earlier skepticism replaced by professional curiosity and respect. Veltar approached her as she gathered her equipment. I owe you an apology, he said formally. When I asked how many Earth Marines it would take to equal one real warrior, I was displaying ignorance. I have a plan. No offense taken, Maria replied. You were working with the information you had. The correct question, Veltar continued, appears to be how many real warriors it takes to equal one Earth Marine. Dracht joined them, his expression thoughtful. Your species' approach to warfare is unlike anything in our historical records. You fight not for honor or glory, but for victory itself. We fight to win, Maria agreed. And to survive. Perhaps that is what made your species strong enough to survive a death world, the Mandorian mused. You learned to think of every battle as a matter of survival. That evening, Maria found herself in an unusual situation. Instead of sitting alone in the mess hall as she had for the past 3 days, she was surrounded by cadets from multiple species, all eager to learn more about human military doctrine. The psychological warfare techniques you used, Quexvi, the crystalline being, was saying, where did those originate? Eamon Send, Ancient Earth History, Maria replied. Humans have been using deception in warfare for thousands of years. Sun Tzu, Miyamoto Musashi, Napoleon. Clausewitz military theorists who understood that winning the battle in the enemy's mind was often more important than winning it on the battlefield. And all human warriors study these ancient texts? Asked Slixqua. The important concepts. Yes. We believe that understanding the history of warfare helps us avoid repeating mistakes and adapt classic principles to modern situations. Vexhai had been quiet throughout the discussion, but finally spoke up. I am curious about something. You have demonstrated capabilities that far exceed Coalition standards, yet you seem to consider yourself merely competent. How do you assess your own abilities relative to other humans? Maria considered that carefully. I'm a good Marine, but not exceptional by human standards. There are thousands of Marines with more experience, better training records, and superior performance evaluations. The silence that followed was profound. If Maria was merely good by human standards, what would an exceptional human Marine be capable of? Perhaps, Dracht said quietly, we are beginning to understand why your species was invited to join the Coalition, despite your short time among the stars. Late that night, Maria sat in her quarters composing a message to her family back on Earth. How could she explain what had happened over the past 3 days? How could she describe the moment when an entire galaxy's military establishment suddenly realized that they had fundamentally misunderstood humanity's potential. Her tablet chimed with an incoming priority message from Admiral Thexus. Cadet Santos, it read. Coalition Command has approved an expedited evaluation program for human military personnel. Based on your performance, Earth has been invited to send additional candidates for assessment, including representatives from other branches of your military services. The message continued. Furthermore, preliminary discussions are underway regarding the establishment of a human military studies program at the Academy. Your species' tactical innovations and combat methodologies may prove valuable for training coalition forces in unconventional warfare scenarios. Your individual assessment will continue, but you are no longer considered a student. Effective immediately, you will be working with our senior tactical instructors to develop new training protocols based on human military doctrine. Congratulations, Staff Sergeant Santos. You have successfully represented your species and demonstrated that Earth's warriors are worthy of their place among the galaxy's finest. Maria stared at the message for a long time. When she had left Earth 3 months ago, she had been one Marine among millions, representing a species that was barely a footnote in galactic affairs. Now she was apparently helping to reshape how the galaxy thought about warfare itself. She finished her message to her family and tried to sleep, but her mind kept racing. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, as she worked with coalition instructors to translate human military doctrine into training programs for alien warriors. But tonight, she allowed herself a moment of pride. The question that had started everything, how many does one Earth Marine take down, had been answered in a way that stunned the Academy. The answer wasn't a number. It was a philosophy. Humans didn't fight to rack up casualties or demonstrate superiority. They fought to win, to survive, and to protect what mattered to them. They used every advantage available, thought creatively under pressure, and never accepted defeat as inevitable. Most importantly, they had learned something that the galaxy's ancient military traditions had apparently forgotten. The warrior who wins is not necessarily the strongest or the best armed, but the one who fights the smartest battle. As Maria finally drifted off to sleep, she could hear conversations continuing in the corridors outside her quarters. Cadets from dozens of species were discussing what they had witnessed, trying to understand how human military doctrine differed from their own traditions. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their physical capabilities or their advanced technology. It was their ability to think differently about problems that everyone else considered solved. And that, Maria reflected, was probably why they had survived long enough to reach the stars in the first place.